it wasn't until I had to fully give the reins to my team and step away that I realized how little I had really trained people to lead the ministry. Sometimes I think we can steal people of the blessing of getting to actually do the ministry. You can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both. Are you the leadership lid in your ministry? Great leaders develop owners and not renters.
We're thankful you're here, brother. Let's hear it for Ryland Russell.
Hello, my name is Ryland Russell, and I am a recovering DIY worship leader. Yes, that is true. From 2010 to 2020, I was our church's lighting programmer, live stream producer, pro presenter guru, lyric video designer, song selector, custom multi-track creator, website designer, main stage patch builder, drum tuner, planning center scheduler, network specialist, speaker system installer, surveillance system commissioner, logo creator, brand manager, and yes, I was the worship and media arts pastor as well. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. But I've been in full-time ministry as the worship and media arts pastor at Central Baptist Church in Owasso from 2010 to 2020. I was addicted to DIY worship. And I really didn't realize it until I had the opportunity to take a sabbatical. I got the opportunity to take 2 months off in 2020. And it wasn't until I had to fully give the reins to my team and step away that I realized how little I had really trained people to lead the ministry. So today I want to share with you the 3 dangers of DIY worship leading. And now I'm a big fan of DIY. I think I have my doctorate from YouTube University. Anybody else in the house? You know what I'm saying? Thank goodness for YouTube. I've been able to, change head gaskets on a car and fix appliances. And most recently, I've actually, I think, officially achieved old man status as I've begun the adventure of becoming a lawn fertilization specialist. I've got the backpack sprayer, I've got the granule weigher and all these things, and I'm really intricate and I'm down deep in it because, you got to save money somehow in ministry, amen? That's right. And, it's not always been successful though. Sometimes I'm less of a Clark Kent and more of a Clark Griswold, if you know what I mean. I remember at our first house, we lived in the church parsonage, and me and my wife got this bright idea that, we could paint our cabinets white. This is no big deal. Well, let me just tell you that there's a reason that painters charge you a lot of money to refinish your cabinets after months and months of sanding and repainting, because we had no idea what we were doing. They eventually sat in the garage for months. It was a giant mess. That was not a good success. I've had my fair shares of falling through ceilings or mild electrocutions or being stuck on a ladder in the church, with a heavy intelligent light thinking, what did I just get myself into? There's no one here. And yeah, luckily most of them have been minor mishaps, but DIY can be dangerous. And living the DIY worship life is really no different. And I think deep down, we know this. So the question is, why? Why do we keep running on this hamster wheel of ministry week after week, doing it ourselves? And I think it's because we believe the lies. So here's a few, and see if any of these ring true to you. The first one, no one is available to help. Man, this is one I hear all the time as I talk to people that are in ministry. Maybe you feel like your church is just so small that the pool of people that you have to pull from, qualified people that can really help our worship and tech ministries out, sometimes feel like they're few and far between. Or maybe I've even heard from other people that all the other ministries have already taken the volunteers, that there's really nobody left. And so, I'll just keep doing it myself. And that's a lie that we believe. Here's another big one. no one can do it as well as me. And if they could, why would they need me? I might lose my position. And this lie really is rooted in pride. Like, if you're like me, you struggle with finding your identity more in what you do than whose you are. And it's just a struggle that we have to fight against that. I've had pastors before that, they go on vacation and they don't get the top tier speaker to come in and replace them while they're gone. They get the associational guy he'll do a good sound biblical job, but we'll miss our pastor while he's gone, right? And maybe you've had that temptation too when you're gone to think, man, I don't want to get, somebody that's better than me to come in and do this because I want my people to miss me. And we believe this lie that no one can do it as well as me. And it keeps us in this DIY cycle. Here's another lie. It's quicker to do it myself. And this is the one that I struggle with the most because the tyranny of the urgent in ministry, the pace that we run is so fast that we believe this lie that it's quicker to do it ourselves because there's like this shred of truth in it, right? That like I can actually get it done quicker than training other people to help me do it. But we know that in the end, in the long run, it's just not healthy, that it's not going to be quicker. We can't get it done on our own. And here's the last lie that I think oftentimes we believe. I don't want to burden my volunteers. I feel like, there's this old idea of like 20% of the people in the church do 80% of the work. I think it might be greater than that a lot of times. And we feel this idea of like, man, our people are working 9 to 5s. They're serving in kids ministry. They're greeters. They're working out in the parking lot. They're doing sound. They're tapped out. And I don't want to burden my people and asking them to do more. But I believe it's a lie. Like we heard yesterday that people are volunteering because they want to be there, right? And sometimes I think we can steal people of the blessing of getting to actually do the ministry. And the problem is that believing these lies perpetuates the DIY mentality and the danger of doing it alone. So I've got 3 dangers that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to be quick because I'm a worship pastor, not a speaker, and it feels weird to not have a guitar or a camera in my hand up here, so bear with me. But here's number 1, and it is the danger of the dead battery. Jonathan Malm, the co-author of Don't Burn Out, Burn Bright, says that at least 40% of pastors are considering quitting, considering mailing it in, turning in the church keys, right? And you probably know someone directly in your ministry, in your family, and your friends that has faced this idea of burnout. Like it's a plague that is all over our churches in America. And I've had it in our own church that we've dealt with. And I've walked alongside friends that have considered giving up. And I've had friends that have just become insurance salesmen or wealth management specialists. And there's nothing wrong with that. But does God have something still for us that he wants to use us for? And the danger of the dead battery is that we're trying to do everything ourselves and we're going to burn out. And in 2020, I had some warning signs of this. And we had just hired a new pastor. His first Sunday at our church was the first Sunday we closed for COVID. And we went completely virtual, and a lot got placed on the worship and media arts pastor's shoulders. Can I get an amen from those of you who walked through that season? Yeah, so you felt this thing of like, man, I got to keep the church going. It's all on me now. And so you're producing these full services, and I've got this new pastor that, I'm trying to, show him that I'm pretty decent at my job. Don't get rid of me. And he's amazing. I love my pastor. But the great thing in that year was that I had that sabbatical coming up. I'd been there for 10 years, and I got to take 2 months off. And part of that sabbatical requirement was that I go through some Christian counseling. And I'd never been to counseling before, so I didn't know what to expect. But I sat down and he asked me, what do you do to relax? What do you do to recharge your dead battery? I said, well, I like to just like go on jogs around the neighborhood, go hiking. Okay, well, what do you do while you're on those jogs and hikes? I said, well, I usually like listening to podcasts or something. Okay, what kind of podcasts do you listen to? Oh, usually like the Churchfront podcast or like something about worship leading. And he's like, hold on. What you're telling me is that the very activity that you're supposed to be disconnecting from your job and relaxing and recharging your battery, you're using to educate yourself. Like you're not, that's the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. So I would say like my weaknesses are a lot like Michael Scott's. I work too hard. I care too much, But I felt this need of like, even during that sabbatical of like, I need to prove that I'm taking advantage of this time, when the whole point of the sabbatical was to release me from those responsibilities, right? And scripture actually speaks to this idea of the danger of the dead battery. In Exodus 18, it says, the next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, what is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening? Moses answered him, because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions. And Moses' father-in-law replied, what you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. If Moses can't handle it alone, you can't handle it alone. I can't handle it alone. His father-in-law spoke some truth into his life. A trusted person came to him and said, bro, you got to lighten the load. And so what he said was, find some capable men to come along and help you carry the burden. And I think that probably many of us have volunteers that are helping us, hopefully, that maybe you aren't completely alone doing your worship and tech ministries. But here's a question I have for you. Do you have leaders or do you have robots or button pushers? I've been guilty of this. We can pre-program so many things, and then we have somebody that just kind of stands there just in case something goes wrong, hit this slider or hit this button. And it's a danger. And to avoid the robot syndrome, we have to equip leaders and delegate authority. Equip leaders and then give them the authority. Craig Rochelle says it this way, and I love it. He says, when you delegate authority, what you're doing is you're giving your leaders an opportunity to grow. When you tell them exactly what to do, you're just controlling them. The reality is this: you can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both. You can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both. He goes on and says, if you empower the right people, there's no limit to what your ministry can accomplish. But if you don't empower the right people, you are the limiting factor in your organization. The strength of your ministry is not a reflection of what you control. It's a reflection of who you empower and who you trust. Are you the leadership lid in your ministry? Because you can only do so much, right? You can only spin so many plates at once. You can only wear so many hats. And so if you want to have your battery at a full charge to do ministry, lighten the load, equip leaders, and delegate authority. Ephesians 4:11 says, our job as ministers is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And it's a lot easier in concept and thought than it really is to live out in our weekly grind of ministry. How do we equip people to do the work of the ministry? But we got to do it, or else we'll end up with that dead battery. All right, here is danger number 2, the danger of dullness. They're all D's, like a good pastor, should make points. The danger of dullness. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. I think of like 2 great football players that are vying for that quarterback position. They really do make each other better as they compete against each other. That idea of iron sharpening iron, when we're DIYing, when we're doing it alone, There's nothing there to sharpen us. There's no one there to kind of make us better. And what I've found in my life, doing ministry now for many years, is that my ministry rhythm that I find myself in, my routine, can actually become a rut that I'm stuck in, that I can't get out of. And I don't know if you've ever felt that, this rhythm that you find yourself in, maybe not be a healthy one, and it becomes a rut you're stuck in. I actually had a friend, a pastor, who was on staff with a fellow worship guy that he was guilty of. He had a file cabinet that he kept all of his orders of service in. And the second Sunday in February came, and he went to his file cabinet and pulled out the order of service from last year. And that was the order of service for this week. And have you ever gone into Planning Center? Let's refresh back in the end and duplicate plan, We can find ourselves just dull and not giving our very best. And this idea of doing it yourself and how can we get people to come alongside of us, think of this concept. This is one of our values as a church staff, that great leaders develop owners and not renters. The idea there is if somebody's renting a house, they don't really care about it, right? They don't own anything. They don't have a vested interest. And when we develop owners, when people have authority in our ministries to help us to accomplish the vision, they care deeply about what's happening week in and week out. So great leaders develop owners, not renters. So how can you battle this renter mentality? Well, create a culture of evaluation. When is the last time that you as the leader asked for feedback from your teams? It's not easy to receive feedback, but we want to be able to give feedback to our teams. So we should have this 360-degree idea of feedback, that it's a healthy culture of everybody is invested in this ministry. Another way you can do this is mentorship. That's something that I just feel this burden on my heart, that we need to be mentored and we need to be mentoring someone else. So, if you don't want to be dull, get some people around you that are better than you, that will sharpen you up. Go to coffee with some other worship pastors, tech pastors. Every month, there's a group of us in our town that we sit and we sharpen each other and we ask each other tough questions. All right, let's move on to danger number 3, the danger of the decoy. And this is the biggest danger of them all. And it's when we lead our ministries without letting the Spirit of God lead us. You see, DIY worship is powerless. There is no power when we do it on our own. Psalm 127, verse 1 through 2 says it like this: unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it in labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is vain that you rise up early and go to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. Man, are we guilty of rising up early and going late to bed, grinding day after day on our own power. But if God is not the one who builds our churches, there's no power there. It's like that old song says, all is vain unless the Spirit of God comes down. Are we guilty of having a form of godliness, but denying its power, having the appearance of it, knowing how to plan a worship set and craft it, and then just kind of asking God to bless it? And there's this recounting in Acts that I was reading randomly in the Message version one time, and it just hit me in my core as a worship pastor. It's a recounting of the story of the golden calf. And, Moses comes down and they replaced true worship with a decoy. And it says this in Acts 7:39-41. It says, that was the time they made a calf idol. They brought sacrifices to it, and they congratulated each other on the wonderful religious program they had put together. Wow. Man, that hit me in the core of like, how often do I get in my car on a Sunday morning and I drive off and think, man, you did good today. That was great. Man, it has nothing to do with how well I perform. How often are we guilty of congratulating each other on this wonderful religious program that we put together just because the MIDI cues fired perfectly? We nailed that transition. The lighting was fire. Or do we celebrate life change and God showing up and doing things that only He can do? See, the danger of the decoy is when we fake it. And if we're not careful, we can become professional worship leaders. You know, we know what works, we know how to do the job. And if we're not careful, we can create these faithful fans of us instead of faithful followers of Christ. There was a moment for me a couple of years ago where somebody rebuked me. And I didn't know what to do with it in the moment. We do a giant Christmas outreach at my church, Christmas spectacular. It's for our city intentionally, very evangelistic in nature. And I mean, we go over the top. You know, we got pyro and confetti cannons and scrim drops and any kind of gimmick you could do in technology stuff. We've probably tried it. And then there's this moment in the worship service in the spectacular where we flip the script and we say, here's what Christmas is really all about. And we go on to tell the story of the gospel and the birth of Christ. And I'm very intentional. And we spend months crafting this service, right? And we finished our first performance. And I walked down the front steps. And there was this gentleman that I didn't know. I'd never seen him before. And he came up to me. And I just thought, okay, he wants to shake my hand. And I said, oh, good evening. Hey, how are you? And he said, do you know why Moses didn't enter the promised land? I was like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, yeah, Moses stole God's glory, and that's why he didn't get to go in the promised land. And son, tonight, you stole God's glory. And I'm just like, oh, wow, this came out of nowhere. The first person that I talked to after spending months crafting this thing and giving as an offering to God, he comes and rebukes me. And he's talking about Numbers 20:10 when Moses struck the rock twice instead of speaking to it. And Moses relied on a religious formula to achieve a result. And I think we can do that at times too. And while I want you to consider the source of people rebuking you, this guy doesn't know my heart. He doesn't know anything about our church. He came one time. But is there a shred of truth in that? Do I need to check myself? And it's just always there now in the back of my mind. So maybe God did use this guy to speak that into my life. I didn't like it, but the tagline now of every YouTube video I make, I think has been influenced by that interaction. And I always say, we can do a lot of great things. Let's do it all for God's glory. And that's how I want to live out my ministry life. That I can do some great things, and we should be striving to do great things for God, but it should be for His glory and not our own. Well, let's get a little practical as we wrap this up today. What are some ways we can avoid these dangers? Well, if you don't want to do it yourself, you need other people to come alongside and help you, right? So don't believe those lies. And here's some ways that I've been able to recruit some new people to our team and that have stayed many, many years. We have very low turnover in our team. One way that you can try is to host an open house for your ministry. We do this about every 6 months. And the great thing about this is that there's no commitment from me to people, and there's no commitment from people to me. So they come on a Wednesday night, and we have a full band rehearsal. All the tech people are there. And before we start rehearsal, they're able to just come and I tour every position. I show them behind the scenes. I share the vision of our ministry, our goals, and kind of what you would be looking at if you were to come and be a part of the team. And then they can play around during rehearsal with stuff a little bit. And it's just a very easy onboard for people to kind of get a glimpse into your ministry. And then I would say, use the pipelines of your church. One that's been great for us is a student pipeline. We are very intentional about getting our youth involved into our tech ministries. I have about 40 volunteers throughout a month, and I'd say a solid 10 to 12 of those are kids 17 and under. And they're running cameras, they're stream directing, and they're solid because we've trained them and we've equipped them to do some of that. Then use the pipeline of new people to your church. Hopefully you have some type of new to whatever church you're at process that they fill out, some kind of thing, and you'll get a thing that says they are interested in singing or technology. Use that. But even more than that, I think that it comes down to being okay with people failing and being okay with it being subpar a little bit. And that's something I had to be okay with. I've released the reins of, I don't program any lights for our service anymore. I don't do anything with ProPresenter anymore. And that was tough for me. Now, I still fire the cues from my feet. We launch our tracks from ProPresenter, and I'm a little bit of a control freak with that. But that's okay. But we have to give people space to fail. So give them a sandbox to play in, I think, is the best thing. Maybe doing some stuff with your youth. We've intentionally, all of our tech in our youth room will be training grounds for when they come into the worship center. So if we have an M32 in the worship center, we've got an X32 in the youth room. So we have the same lighting programs in our different venues. Even our kids ministry is using ProPresenter. My wife has 3rd and 4th graders running ProPresenter, and they can do it. They do it better than some of my older people. Yeah. And here's the sad reality that I think we need to be okay with, that sometimes it's actually better to pay a professional. You ever done a DIY job that you spent a lot of time and effort on, and then you're like, I should have just paid the guy to come paint the cabinets for us? Maybe, even though Michael Curtis can tell you exactly how to tune a sound system, it might be better just to have Michael Curtis come tune your sound system, right? Because he's got years of experience, he's got the right tools, and he can just do a better job. It saves the church money in the long run because you're not spending all of your time that they're paying you for to do a job that you're really not qualified for. So establish relationships with other leaders in your area, find a mentor, and then serve out of the overflow. And what I mean by that is, recently in the last couple of years, I've become a part of a discipleship group, and it's been the best thing for me because I'm not doing it alone. Ministry can be so lonely. It's so hard to find true friendships that you can trust, that you can be open and honest with, right? I don't know if you feel that, but I feel that. And so now I have this group of guys, 4 guys we meet every week, and we're just walking through the Bible together, and they can speak truth into my life. So when they say, hey, Ryland, you're stealing God's glory with that, I can trust them because they're walking through life with me, right? And so being in the Bible together, holding me accountable to my relationship with Jesus allows me to serve in the overflow and not do life alone. So, which of these 3 dangers do you see in your own leadership? Is your battery almost dead? Did you come to Churchfront hoping just to get enough charge to survive till January? Are you feeling a little dull, kind of stuck in the rut of whatever rhythm you're in? Or are you a decoy? Are you truly relying on God and His Spirit to lead your ministry? Well, I started today by confessing to you that I am a recovering addict. And while I might be sober for a few years now, the temptation is always there to slip back into DIY worship leading. But the cost is too great. The calling is too important to waste it doing it alone. Thanks.